The theory behind that is that two-wheelers take so much less urban space, whether they're motorized or not, take so much less urban space than a car, that it's appropriate to have some kind of preference for it. All over the place in Paris, you'll see two-wheel parking lots. You'll see the sign, just motorcycles and bicycles are there. So those are in the bus lanes as well. And the bus lanes are wide enough, though. The bus lane is the width of about a bus plus 1.5 meters, 2 meters. There's space to pass a bus safely as a bicyclist. Interesting problems that we have with bus plus bicycle environments that aren't as bad there. Stop spacing is much wider than here. Stop spacing is about 400 meters. Here, a really courageous stop spacing is 400 feet. It's a really long spacing. One of the things that you can't do in Paris, which I always do when I'm in America, but I can't do this in Europe. I can't walk down the line and wait for the thing to overtake me, because it'll catch me between stops. It's too far. It's too far. But that makes the bus system very efficient, and one of the things that also means that there's less of the leapfrogging between cyclists and buses that you often get in a cross-country bike lane. So that works better. Taxis, that works in the context of a system where taxis are generally not hailed on the street. But generally you go to a taxi queue to get a taxi, and in that case it works for the taxis to run in the bus lane. Obviously in a system like San Francisco where people are used to hailing taxis, that doesn't work, because then you get all these things blocking the bus lane. Those are some of the things that they've used. Yes, sir?
What's a reasonable stop spacing for a city like Seattle?
Depends on whether you want to be more like Europe.
Maximizing our system efficiency.
Well, if you maximize your system efficiency, I'm going to be reluctant to just say an abstract number. Right? But what you would want to do is study what happened in Los Angeles with the creation of the Metro Rapid. The Metro Rapid is a red bus that runs down an arterial, stopping about once per K. So there are about 3 or 4 local stops in between each Metro Rapid stop. And you can go into their data and you can look at how much of the local market shifted over to the Rapid and how much the local market still insisted on its local service. And I think it's more than 50% shifted. So probably, again, you're going to get complaints when you remove a single bus stop, but complaints are part of the territory. So it's really a matter of what's the optimum spacing to serve, kind of 70, 80%, to make 70, 80% comfortable walking to it. And that's probably something a little less than a kilometer. It may be something like 500, 600 meters. Again, the European standard appears to be about 400 meters. So it's interesting to think about that. The other way you could think about it is, historically in America, we've had the view, the bus operations world has had the view that our basic product is a bus that stops every 2 blocks. And then when we have lots of customers, when we're really busy, we'll run some express or limited stop buses that run faster. What if we had just started from the other end?
Yeah.
What if we took the view that, no, what a bus does is stop about once every 1,000 meters. And that if there are neighborhoods like Broadway where there's lots of local activity and people, we obviously need to be closer, then yeah, we'll put in a streetcar or a local bus or something just right there where we need it. But what if everywhere else we took the view that, okay, who can't walk to one of our stops every 1,000 meters? Well, seniors, some frail, some disabled people. Okay, so there'll be some sort of van thing in there that fills that gap and makes sure we serve those needs. Where would we be? I think we'd be in a different place. And yet that is purely a historical accident, that we have started with the frequent stop service as what we think of as our baseline. I don't know that it has to be that. Sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could give an example of a bus agency that's undertaken a sort of a system-wide comprehensive look at stop spacing and implemented any kind of like a stop consolidation type of program, whether that's been beneficial or not.
San Francisco's doing that now. They're doing something called the Transit Effectiveness Project, and it has been really the first sort of comprehensive, rational, data-driven look at the network that they've done for about 30 years since the current network went into place in 1982. They did look systematically at stop spacing, but it was a consultative and public outreach-driven process to some extent. So they did not get anywhere near proposing the thought experiment that I just gave you of stopping every half kilometer or kilometer. But it has made a difference because I remember living in San Francisco And this is such a classic sort of bus operations approach. The transit agency would finally be so frustrated about a single bus stop that was frustrating their operations. And they would finally go to the Board of Supervisors and try to make an issue about, we really need to get rid of this bus stop at 17th and Mission. We just stopped 16th and 18th. And we had a whole citywide conversation about the bus stop at 17th and Mission. And finally they took it out. But it was a ridiculous waste of human effort to do it that way. When, with almost the same amount of effort, you could have said, we need a consistent stop spacing all over the city.
Right.
And it needs to be expressed in feet or meters, not in blocks, because our blocks are different sizes.
Yeah.
We have to be kind of factual about this. And they're only doing that now. They're doing that, by the way, in the context of an organization called the San Francisco Metropolitan Transport Authority now, which is a very interesting structure, because that new structure they've created is transit plus parking and traffic. And as a result, you now have a situation where the transit planners walk down the hall and talk to the parking people about this particular place where they might do a bus stop, instead of having huge meetings trying to coordinate different giant large bureaucracies. So that's an interesting thing to watch. But I think San Francisco is doing as well as anyone I know of in North America. It's probably right now. Sir?
I don't mind walking a mile, but the issue is we've got broken sidewalks, tree branches, or
Yes.
places there are no sidewalks. So what do we do about that so that the bus system can be better and I can walk a mile to it?
The performance of any transit system, I mean, even as a transit planner, obviously we would all like to believe that our own expertise is what will save the world. No. The performance of your transit system is mostly about your built environment. And points like that have so much more impact on whether people use transit than even the design of the service. If you have a built environment that is hostile to pedestrians, you can't expect people to use transit. It's really that simple. I agree completely with that comment. Sir.
One quick comment about Paris is that almost everybody has either a weekly or monthly pass that covers every bus, every metro, the RER, the SNCF local services. It's a unified tariff system. I wanted to talk about the network effect and frequency and so on. To me, it makes a lot of sense that the networks of transfers would work really a lot better than a lot of direct service. But I think the frequency has to be enough that the transfer is reasonably reliable, or the penalty if you miss a transfer is not a half-hour wait. So what's the minimum frequency that is needed to really rely on transfers? So that's I have a second point too, but go ahead and answer
The
that.
rule of thumb has always been 15 minutes, but that's actually an average of some different cases. The shorter the trip you're talking about, the higher the frequency needs to be. This is actually one of the problems with a lot of proposed shuttle, and for that matter, a lot of proposed very short streetcar lines, that if you don't have really high frequency, it's going to be fast. If you just miss, the question is, if I just miss one, is it faster to walk? And if it is, then that's not very fast. But for broader on the sort of citywide scale, when we're talking about a citywide network, what should those cross timelines be doing? The basic rule is 15.
Okay, my second question, which also relates to the network effect and transfers. And if you don't know, I think you know the Seattle area pretty well, but we're about to spend like $4 billion rebuilding the 520 bridge, and it's supposed to be a bus rapid transit route, and probably one of the single busiest connecting points in the entire city of Seattle is the Montlake Flyer Station. They're actually widening the entire footprint of the roadway and eliminating that stop. And the transit agencies, with the Washington Department of Transportation says, the transit agencies don't need that stop. They're just going to run direct buses to the University District, and everybody that needs to go that uses that stop should use the University District buses. But after evenings, weekends, there's no way they're going to run those buses on the same frequency as the transfer function that facility provides today. And I don't understand why the transit agencies are not speaking up about the connectivity and transitability of that station.
Before I answer that, does anyone in the room speak for one of the transit agencies and want to respond to that? Position that I do? Okay, so I just thought I'd ask. I'm not going to point to anyone. Yes,